so that I can talk to you about what this gun looks like. Now obviously this section was filmed in advance in the field because you could see my tootsies. But that's alright, we'll get it all honeyed together for you so that you guys can see the final result. While we're looking at her, first thing I want to cover is this is a fairly early pan magazine. To release it, we'll press over on this notch and lift her out. These guys did not stay around forever. Instead, we start to see this later pattern in which we sort of reach in there and press over. Honestly, this is a lot easier on the fingers. Looking at one of these mags, by the way, we will see that we have a drum, some nice spikities, and a slot for the rim of the cartridge. So the way this is going to work, if you can see, and I gotta get a shallow angle, is there's a sort of double line fit. The tip of the bullet points inward and it rotates around. I'm not gonna get in much more detail than that because we have an animation coming up that is gonna be way cleaner than anything I can show you here. So we'll set these aside, take a look at this action. So now we can see that we are going to feed under this lip here. And I'm sorry guys, I forgot the plastic pokey finger. So our cartridge is going to go under here. Our bullet is going to face that way for anybody that doesn't know their orientation at the moment. When we operate the gun, you will see, and I'll have to release that bolt forward. There we go. You can see this guy, this whole armature across here. You can see him move. So back and forth. And what that's doing is positioning the cartridges for feeding. And it's also pushing them down into the bolt path. Again, much clearer in the animation, but I thought you would want to see it in action in real life. While we're up here, I should point out we have our adjustable rear sight that stays folded. You do have to pop the whole thing up in order to shoot. It's quite tall. This one has some later modification. We'll get in that in a moment. Now, we should probably talk about disassembly so that you guys can see what's going on more with the gun. So, again, fires from the open bolt, so we would be back here, and when we fire, we go forward. You can see our ribs, but like I said, disassembly. So, let me prop that with my toe for a second so that you guys can see. I'm going to release this lever forward and twist on this stock. It's a bit hard to do for the camera while huddled up in the corner, but let's see what we can get away with. There we go. Stock's free. I'm going to set it aside. Now, we need to get further into this lock work up here. So what you can do is you can pull the trigger, pull the whole pistol grip assembly to the rear. This will have our trigger and release sear up here. It's all powered by spring up at the front. Again, it's going to be visible in the animation. So now we can roll forward and let that bolt kind of slide back for a second. Let's pay first attention to this beautiful clock style spring in gear setup. So let me get the bolt out. So I'll pull out the handle and set this aside. Now our piston, rod, and bolt will all come out together. That bolt should look pretty familiar for anybody that's looked at a K31 before. Isn't that kind of cool? So let me set that aside for 1 second and let's look at this toothing here on the underside. So that engages on this gear here. And like we said in the history, they had to work out that concentric spring, the regular coil spring. So they went with a clock spring in this geared assembly. So when they move across each other, it puts pressure back on the spring, which is frankly fascinating. You don't see a lot of these in a lot of firearms. Again, better look in the animation. You can see that we have our permanent firing pin mounted up here. It sits through the bolt body, and it actually acts as the cam for the bolt in order to rotate it, and it's the firing pin itself poking out the face of the bolt there. Nice little compact design. Getting into the bolt body itself, we have two, count them, two extractors, so they really do make sure those cartridges come out. And you can see that we have a lug set on the top, especially tall on the top of the rear of the bolt. Now this guy is stationary as we move, we'll see it in the animation, allowing the bolt to rotate and lock or unlock. This upper lug here actually engages on our friend here that was moving back and forth earlier. and I'll show you that here in just a second. So we got to go a little deeper into the gun. The way to do that is to remove this plate. I have a feeling with how sticky it is, I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse on that just because it takes a little smacking. But all we're realistically going to do is make sure that this guy is all the way over, and we're going to shove that plate back this way and then pop her up. I just am going to time lapse it for you because we don't have that much time in the episode. All right, sorry about that, guys. The plastic poundy hammer is a little bit rough on the lavalier. All I did was tap that guy rearward, and now what we're going to do is lift up. So we'll just pop up at the rear, and boom, we're in. So we can see now, if I twist, we can see now this guy oscillating back and forth. We can see how there's a lug way for him to be rocked back and forth on. If we lift him out, and sorry, this takes a bit of alignment. There we go. You can see the raceway for the lug. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so we'll put him back for the moment because there's no real need to go too deep. Well, actually, you know what? I'll leave him off for 1 second. There's one other thing I can show you in here while we're in here. If I can, in fact, get something in here to lift and pull. We have a cover that's hiding our ejector. There we go, so we'll just dovetail him out. And down in here is our ejector. We can give him a poke from the other side, usually with a bullet tip, but in this case I have some pliers handy. And he will presumably come out if I don't pinch my fingers. This is riveting television for all you guys. Here, let's see. There we go, like a game of Operation. Dun, dun, dun. So there's our ejector. You can tell he rocks back and forth. Again, this guy's going to be visible in the animation. All right. While I'm here, I want to show one other thing, though. These two guys right here, it's probably not the easiest thing in the world for you guys to see, but these are going to operate against these dimples on the outside of the pan. They're not just decorative. These actually serve to move and stop the pan. It works kind of like a revolver system, honestly. I am going to take special care in the animation to make sure that these things are clear. They're absolutely fascinating, but to me they look like little crab mouths. All right, other than that, we're getting pretty far into the gun, so let me flip her over. Now, while I was working on this plate, our pin that holds the barrel assembly to the receiver assembly went ahead and worked its way free, so we have that. Normally this is held captive by our clockwork, so I just didn't bump it out when I was going through earlier. Sorry, guys. So that pin was holding this all from rotating. Now that it's not there, we can, in fact, twist our receiver off. Dun, dun, dun. Receiver is free. That's a heck of a piece of complicated metal, but there's not much else to it now. And we'll bring this guy over and get a look at this barrel jacket. Now, I've had the bipod mounted so I could work. Time to get that out of my way. So I'm just going to free it up and press it off and give it a good yank to get it around the jacket. And she's free and clear, and I'm making a mess. So now we've got barrel, jacket, cooling fins. See where I'm at, guys? Okay, good. Another piece that was up under that bipod that is now free is our gas key. If you guys can see him now. He rests here and tabs in there. Generally the bipod rests over him. So you can see there's a notch in the bipod to kind of sit over top of this guy to hold him in place. This allows us to have a 2-position gas plug right here. So if we adjust this, we can open up the gas port wider or keep it smaller. That helps with fouling and other things. That's just sort of a field adjustment, but we'll get it out of our way. And you can see hole and hole. So all this will set aside, and it's time to get into the shroud. For that, I'm going to need a screwdriver, which is again boring television. So let's do another quick time lapse. I'm just going to unscrew this screw. Okay, so now this guy's free to be lifted out of the way. At that point, you don't have to pry him all the way off. Instead, he'll just slide down and we'll be able to remove the end of our jacket. This guy can slide off the front. We're starting to look like Buck Rogers in here, as you can tell. The rest of the gun now has to come out the other side. So I've got to drive this back towards the muzzle end, the best way to do that is to sort of hit it. So shove and smack, and then pull. Oh. Sorry, folks, need a bit of leverage. There we go. All right, so big empty jacket. That's out of our way. And now you can see these beautiful, beautiful cooling fins. Look at that. That's just great. Big hunk of aluminum. And we now have our gas sleeve for the piston, so this guy can be spun off. Now, the gun could be further disassembled. We're just not in the mood for it because what you would have to do is you would have to take a special wrench, pop this guy off. He serves as the cap. The barrel's set down in there. This is wrapped around the barrel too. So there's actually a special tool. We have one handy, but we're not going through it. But this guy threads down over the barrel the way it would lock to the receiver, but instead it sort of overruns so that you can twist and hammer this thing out. So it's pretty good that you have a strong way of doing that without tearing up the muzzle end of the barrel. But again, there's just no reason for us to press the whole barrel out of this thing just so you can see a straight piece of pipe. I think you guys get the idea. It's got a hole at this end, a hole at this end, and a little tiny hole right under there. So that's pretty much it for the teardown. If we kind of pull back, we'll see there's a fair bit that goes into a Lewis gun. Thanks, me. Now let's go to me for more details on how this gun works. Actually, I should stop and thank our Patreon supporters because with their help, we were able to afford a bribe to YouTube user VBBSMYT. Is there any way to pronounce that? Anyway, with his help, we can now present this beautiful piece of work on how the Lewis machine gun works. As a matter of fact, we are hoping to get his help to do all the machine gun portions for the show. Unfortunately, you guys are stuck with my usual hokey 2D stuff for when we do the rifles and pistols. Let's take a look at that cooling system. Every time we fire the gun, we're going to create a pulse of air pressure. Now that's going to draw cool air in from the rear and push that hot air out through the front. Taking a look at the gas system, we will see that with each cartridge we fire, the excess gas is going to be bled into a piston under the barrel. This drives back our piston and our bolt. The clock spring underneath the piston returns it and the bolt forward, feeding the next round and firing it when it slams home. The bolt rotates thanks to a camway set in the bolt body, which is twisted by the straight body of the firing pin arm. Our ejector is set on the left side and works like a teeter-totter with the bolt. It smacks the cartridges out firmly to the right. Our feed mechanism is controlled by a tab on the top rear of the bolt body extension. This simply cams it over, dropping the next cartridge down. Here is our two-plane magazine with the slope just at that center point. Remember, that's important to keep pressure off the system. A pure helix adds too much weight. You can see the rods that help control the rounds and force them to feed down the slots. And now, if we look at the outer body of the magazine, we'll see a revolver-like mechanism with a pawl that's going to push it over each time. We also have a brake that prevents this from rotating the other way, essentially a cylinder stop. Speeding things up, we can now see how the gun works in concert.